All right, let's come together. We're going to start right at 10:30. We want to leave a lot of time for questions and Q&A. So welcome, come on in. If during the session you want a banana or a tart or an alkaline water in a carton, you can go back and eat. There's also some tea and some coffee back there. I'll introduce myself in a second. But welcome. If you have a rising sixth grade student in Chinese immersion, last year in this room we had some parents that did not have a rising sixth grade student in Chinese immersion. If that was you, you might feel like some of the activities are repetitive, but bear with us. But welcome. I want to do an overview of the session before we get started. I'm Darnell Fine. I work in middle school as a deputy principal. I will be transitioning to the high school. There's a number of individuals here to support your kids. We want you to have an understanding of what that transition looks like to grade 6. Raise your hand if you went to the rising sixth grade transition meeting. Raise them higher. These folks can tell you about all of the other parts of the transition process. We're really talking about the transition for Chinese immersion into middle school, and we want that transition to be full of joy and purpose. That's why we're here. Raise your hand if you're a leader in elementary school. Yeah, right there. Don't forget you're a leader here at Shuley. They're here to support that transition. Raise your hand if you're representing middle school. I'll introduce this guy in a second. That's our principal, Chris Beingessner. And raise your hand if you're representing the high school as a leader. Ryan, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Ashley, you can raise your hand too. I know you're here as a parent, but you're here also representing and wearing 2 hats. Thank you. We all believe in the same thing. Regardless of what division we come from, we are here to ensure that your students feel a deep sense of joy and purpose when they transition into the middle school. And we're going to be doing about 4 things. Delinda will be leading us in an inclusion activity to help ground us. Some of you all have already started that inclusion activity. It's a language portrait. Chris Beingesser, our middle school principal, we'll be talking about the Middle School World Language Program. He will talk about the advisory program in Chinese, as well as our grade 6 electives, as well as our after-school activities. Karin is also here, who helps with some of those after-school activities. You might see her picture in some of these slides. And then we'll transition back to Delinda, and she will talk a little bit about the renaming of some of our courses to be responsive to student-parent feedback and what our educators are saying is needed for that transition to be a successful one. And Delinda will also talk about the high school pathways. Most of our time, if we plan this right, will be for this, reflection and questions from you. We don't want you to leave with so many questions that you have to go back to your WhatsApp chats and ask them. We want the questions to be posed in this particular group so that we can be responsive in the moment. With that being said, this is our strategic direction. Whether it's Chinese immersion, whether it's grade 7 science, whether it's high school seniors graduating, joy and purpose is at the center of all that we do. That's what we want. There are some other components to this of a culture of excellence. We want an excellent Chinese immersion program and an excellent transition. We want possibilities where we're exploring really unique Chinese electives. We want definitely extraordinary care. So the reason why we have so many different folks across the school here is because we're really centering that extraordinary care in service of joy and purpose. Here's our middle school team. I like this picture. Usually this gets claps, but that's okay. I wasn't fishing for claps, but that's okay too.
They don't know you very well yet. They don't know how good you are yet.
Oh, thank you for the compliment. Thank you. So, of course, that's me. This is Chris Beingessner. This is Audrey Hazelton, who is helping with that 5-6 transition overall. We also have Mr. Walters here, who's our Dean of Student Life. He helps not just with discipline, but also with ensuring that the student life of students in the middle school, students are supported social emotionally, but they're also supported behaviorally. We have our former dean of student life in the back right there, Ryan Bruce, who can also tell you a little bit more about that job description. But Mr. Walters is someone who does any and all things. We also have Betsy Hall, Dr. Betsy Hall, who will be the principal for grade 7. And the transitions will still be supported, whether it's 5 through 6, 6 through 7, 7 through 8. The middle school team is here to support you. You also have Delinda, Miss Wu, or Wu Laosha, also supporting you in those transitions. We also recognize that many of you all are coming with different hats and different expectations. And we also recognize that some of you all are coming into this space as reflectors. You want to reflect on questions. You want to talk and discuss. Some of you all, maybe about 3 of you all, are coming into the space as activists who want things to change now or change yesterday. We need to get a move on improving our program. We also have our pragmatists that are in the room. You just want the information, the nuts and bolts, all of the details. And we have some academics in the room who are wondering what academic theories back this up. And some of you all were voluntold to be here by your spouses. You all are also welcome in this space too. But however you're entering the space, you're welcome, and we want to support you. There are some community norms recognizing that there's diverse perspectives. You've seen this before. We want everyone to contribute productively and positively. In order for this to be a positive experience for your students, that's an important norm. Refrain from discrimination. Oftentimes, we have to point to that in one-on-one conversations. Not often. Every once in a while, we have to point to that in one-on-one conversations. But really, this means be open-minded and recognize that there's diverse perspectives. Go to the source. People are the source. If there is a concern, go directly to the person, because oftentimes, we make assumptions about what they're thinking, what their intentions are, but if we go to the source, we can clear those up. The big one, and the biggest one, is center your students. Chris is going to talk about what that means, but this is the most important one in the middle school, is that we center students in their experiences. Share information accurately. If we are disseminating misinformation in our social circles, that's not necessarily upholding our core values as a school, and assume positive intentions. I do want to go back to this one. Raise your hand if you've had a middle schooler before. These are your experts. They know all about the quirks of middle school students. Raise your hand if this will be your first middle school student. We have years and years of experience working with kids going into middle school. They're going to grow taller. They're going to be more moody. They're going to be quirkier. That's all natural. But there's a lot of experts in the room that can support you, and a lot of other parents that can say, this is normal. Their arguments, their questions of why, their defiance, which I absolutely love. That's a normal physiological transition for students. With that being said, keep these community norms in mind, not just for the inclusion activity, but as we engage in conversation. I'm gonna turn it over to Delinda, who's going to guide us through an inclusion activity to really kind of set the space around our vision and why we're here. Let's give Delinda a round of applause, our Director of World Languages.
Let's give Dana a round of applause. Thank you for your leading. Okay, thank you. So I'd like to take this opportunity for us to review the vision for world language, the whole to K-12 world language visions. Give you 30 seconds to read. First, yeah. Okay, so you can see at SAS, we want to use the understanding of the language your student learned so they can better understanding their own identities. So there's a famous saying called, the more language you know, the more you are human. What does that mean? Means the more language you're able to speak, you're able to understanding multiple culture, right? You're understanding the multiple identities. You're understanding the cognitive flexibilities, as well as you understanding the broad world around us. Okay, so that is our human beings. I would like to share one example. What is a person called Kevin, his language portrait look like? You can see they're colored with different identity. The pink is Chinese and the blue is English, for instance. So you can see Kevin, he's thinking in Chinese, okay? He has a Chinese stomach. And he also have many friends and family members are Chinese. And with time, when he grew up, he write his master and PhD dissertation in English. And he traveling around meet many people are speaking in English, okay? And he also use Spanish for his part-time job. Use Korean and Japanese for traveling around the world, okay? So this is a type of person like Kevin. Now, it's our turn to have a self-reflect about what our identity about. So right now, each of you will be given a piece of the paper like this, and there's a person in the middle. What you're going to do is you're going to assign a color to each language that represents your identity. Okay, like this. And then you write down the language and label them with color of your choice. Okay? And you color your portrait, showing which part of your body represents your language. And you have 5 minutes to do the activity. Okay? And briefly describe the meaning behind your choice at the bottom. You have 5 minutes independently to do this. I'm sorry. Thank you, Amy. 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes independently to do this. Okay, good. Okay, you can see most of you are ready. Now, you're going to share your portrait and explain to your able partner, okay, from what you have been drawn and represented about you, okay? Share with one able partner. You have 5 minutes for sharing, okay? Let's go. Okay, great. Lots of interesting conversation I heard among yourself. Chris, how many languages you are speaking?
Well, speaking or speaking well, those are different things. I had 4 on my language portrait that I've been exposed to at places I've lived or the languages I've studied. But like, how many do I know well? 1. Least qualified person in the room. Let me make that clear.
Okay, you speak 4 different languages and the one you think is excellent.
Yes.
Okay, now welcome Chris coming to share us the middle school language program.
I didn't even know what she was doing. I just got sucked in. That's funny. Appreciate the conversations at tables. Had a nice visit here. Thank you. I want to introduce Ben Robotascio, who's actually one of our counselors. He's a counselor for 7th grade, but he's also here because he has a current 6th grade student who went through the Chinese immersion program. And so he can sometimes be helpful if sometimes. That didn't sound very, that was not a ringing endorsement. Okay, Ben's great, and I often go to him with parenting questions, and he helps me, and he's helped me for 10 years. That's a better endorsement, Ben. Yeah, sometimes. So this is a video that I didn't mean to start. It's a couple years old, but what it does is just gives you a few glimpses into what the kids who come out of Chinese immersion experience in the middle school. So we'll give that a play, and then we'll continue through.
然后今天，他来了，我们要先快的上这个课。
另外这个 slide 上面，不知道带他名字。对，你再把他的名字全部 copy 这个就可以了。
捕食者和猎物的关系非常的简单，就是捕食者要干嘛？
吃掉猎物，
要吃掉猎物，杀死猎物，对不对？
It's been a great pleasure to have an immersion student be part of the world language programming this year. I've seen them showcase their passion, creativity, and energy in Chinese classroom through so many different ways. The foundation from their prior learning experience has allowed them to transition smoothly.
I've been really enjoying the Chinese electives and advisory so far and I feel like they're really making an effort to have us have more bilingual time and to speak Chinese.
我们也在这里玩球。
I'm really enjoying Chinese advisory and Chinese electives because it's a really good compromise for no more Chinese immersion and we still get enough Chinese speaking time.
I am an advisor for Chinese language advisory, and it's been new for us this year, the first time we've had it. And in our advisory, we have students who came from the immersion program and also students who are native speakers. So we're all merged together in one space.
我会打电动，我会跟我的朋友一起。
It's been really interesting to have them in here because most of the language we're using is not academic Chinese. It's more relational and like, for example, today's lesson was about how do we manage our emotions. And I talked to them about their weekends and what's going on in their lives and what is their frustration with homework or classes. So it's really a different kind of language, more conversational with them.
你好，我们是奥利弗和，我们要吃你。
这跟平时一样，但是有点差，是因为我们朋友现在要吃那个菜粉。
今天我有点紧张，还有点开心。
As students have more opportunities to use their Chinese during advisory, they become more confident in spontaneous situations, and they gained a deeper understanding of Chinese culture, leading to increased cultural competence and insight. 然后你怎么做演讲？我知道很多的人是用Google Slides 做演讲。Furthermore, a highly valued element of Chinese advisory is its capacity to bridge classroom learning with students' lives and the broader world, makes their learning experience more valuable, meaningful, and powerful.
Chinese elective classes are like a really great way to continue getting some extra Chinese in middle school. I think you should definitely consider taking Chinese electives and being in a Chinese advisory because I bet a lot of your friends are also going to be doing Chinese electives and it's a great way to have some time to hang out with them and work together with them.
What I love most about this class is that it's so much fun. I get to create and edit media with my best friends. We get to make movies, we get to edit photos, and right now we are learning about how to use Canva and create posters.
After learning Chinese a lot in elementary school, I think it's cool to be able to use the language to do some more interesting things instead of just learning the language.
和猎物，那么它相对应的就是猎物。
I really enjoyed this group of kids' energy and talent. Apart from their Chinese proficiency, that is quite impressive. From 6 years of learning in immersion program, they also bring in a lot of new perspectives, new way of learning to our middle school.
如果想的话，它也是吃的。就是如果你从捕食者那边想，它都是吃的。我看到有记录，环境科学、生理动物去哪儿了？
I'm very excited about they are still continuing to enhance their Chinese skills, especially their oral proficiency through the practice of literacy and language acquisition.
Okay, so a little bit dated, but it gives you a bit of a sense of what your kids are going to experience. In terms of that transition through from immersion into middle school, next year, about 70 to 75% of their classes will be in English. And this is the tension that we as an organization have to balance, and it is a tension. It's a tension between honoring and continuing all of the great learning that your kids have done through the immersion program, but also knowing that they're going to a very rigorous high school with high expectations and many advanced courses. And so that taper is done intentionally so that we can ensure, and I've told the group 2 years ago when they were struggling a little bit with this, I said, what I don't want is for you to come to me when your child is in grade 9 and say, my student is not ready for high school. And so that is why this taper is intentional. When we look at what your kids will have the option to do next year, they have an advisory class in Chinese that they can take. It works out to be the first 25 minutes of every day, and I'll talk a little bit about advisory. They'll take Chinese as a world language class, which is currently 45 minutes a day. If they choose to take 1 or 2 of the Chinese electives that are offered, that's 45 minutes every other day. And then we do something in middle school that I'll talk about called Try Time, which ends up being 50 minutes a day for 3 weeks each semester. So it's about 85 minutes per day where they will be exposed to Chinese, not counting anything after school that they might do. In terms of the advisory, I'm going to give you information that you can't tell your friends I gave you, because a little bit of this is a repeat from the 5 to 6 parent night, but I think this context will help you understand a little bit more about the middle school. So it is very large, that you probably already knew. So we have about 960 students in the middle school, but of course that's broken into 3 grades. And so we have 6th grade, about 316 students is what we'll have there, and that is still a very large number. And so we divide those 316 students into 3 teams. So now we're down to about 106 students. And that'll be your students' team. So if you've had a middle schooler, you might have heard of like 6A, 6B, 6C. Those are the 3 teams in 6th grade. The letters do not mean anything besides what floor they're on. So A is the 1st floor, B is the 2nd floor, C is the 3rd floor. I had a daughter on A, a son on C. It is a common experience across the teams. But what it does is when we look at their core classes, the kids have those classes with that same group of students. So it takes this big sort of overwhelming feeling number of kids and brings it into a smaller group. During electives, which I'll talk about in a minute, the whole grade misses. So even if your child doesn't end up with their best friend on their team, they still have before school, lunch, break, and electives where they can connect with their friend. And then the smallest group we have is advisory, and that is 12 students who meet with in the case of the Chinese advisory, a Chinese teacher. And this is where they connect and get to know each other. They will go on the Classroom Without Walls trip in the fall and spend a whole week with their advisory, getting to know everyone. And that adult is sort of their first point of contact. And that adult can also be your first point of contact if you have questions. So in elementary school, you would have morning meeting where your kids get together and they meet with their teacher. This is the equivalent of that for middle school, but in a smaller group, so about 12 kids. And we also have try time in middle school. So for 3 weeks of the year, we actually take advisory, we make it longer, and kids are given the choice of what they want to learn. And it's not graded. And the fact that it's not graded brings out a really interesting thing we don't see. So I'm old, I've been here 10 years. So I was here when Try Time was rolled out, and the first thing we saw, the first year we rolled it out, kids were trying to do Try Time like it was school. So they were like, okay, I am going to write an essay. Okay, I am going to learn a bunch of facts. And it was really interesting because now, as the program has evolved and as it's not graded, kids decide what they want to learn and they create some questions, they investigate them, they create or practice something, and then they reflect on that. And your kids will have the opportunity to do this in Chinese with their advisor. So their advisor leads them through this process. And then we also have the grade 6 electives in Chinese. So I'll give you, again, don't tell your friends, giving you the sneak peek on the grade 6 schedule. So your kids will start their advisory for 25 minutes in Chinese, and then these are their core classes. And the next slide will be more specific, but that's English, social, science, math, and PE. They rotate around a little bit, but in grade 6, essentially, your core classes are done by 1:30. And that's when your kids will take their world language and electives, and they may be flipped. In terms of the year-long electives, their world language, of course, is year-long. If they take a music, if they take band, strings, or choir, that runs for the whole year. We want some repetition and some practice. And then there are also semester-long electives, so these run for half of the year. And that's where your 2 Chinese electives come in, but we also have visual art, coding, design tech, drama, movement, digital media, strategic learning, robotics, and then Chinese performing arts and modern Chinese media and culture. You don't have to remember any of this. And actually the comms department is working on a little video for each one so that when you sit down with your child, you can actually walk through and see what's really going on in the classes. But to give you a sense of the big picture, a more specific picture, if you looked at a 2-day schedule, your child might start with advisory in Chinese, have English language arts, then they get a break, then they have math, and then they have lunch and recess, then they have social studies, then they might have their Chinese world language class, and then their elective in Chinese. The next day they would have language arts again. We have a double block of language arts, have their break, then they have phys ed and health, go to recess, have science, and then have Chinese, and then here's where that other elective would fit in. So if they're taking a music, or if they're taking, my son's currently taking drama, that's where that would live. Before I move on, any questions? I will tell you, you do not have to learn it, and you shouldn't try. Your kids will figure it out.
So is it the recommendation that, oh, sorry.
Yeah, you can ask them.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to figure out these electives. So so there are 2 electives per semester, and one of them, the recommendation is to pick in the Chinese electives. Is that how it kind of works?
That's a great question. Do you really want my recommendation? Even if you're not going to want to hear it? Okay. I think you need to follow your kid's lead. I do. It goes 2 ways. Okay, I'll just be super candid. Okay, so I would say follow your child's lead and try to come to some middle ground. The challenge that we all have in life, and your kids have as they enter middle school, is the first time they've had any choice in anything. And so you want to give them a little bit of empowerment. And so if you dictate exactly what elective they're going to take, you can get away with that for 6th grade. You totally can, absolutely. In 7th grade, it's going to get a little bit harder as they're pushing for independence and more control. And then in 8th grade, you've probably lost them entirely, and they might do what my daughter did, which was tell me she had already picked her classes, which I was okay with. But, so I would say my recommendation would be to say, hey, what looks really interesting about this? And just start that conversation at home. And I have some more advice coming from the back.
Yeah, I do a lot of work with scheduling in high school, and inevitably every November, we get a parent calling us and saying, how do I get my kids' class changed? I forced them to go into this class, and now it's a disaster. They're not happy, we're not happy. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but when you go against or you force them into a class or coerce or more than gently nudge or bribe into a class, it often doesn't end up being what you were hoping for.
Ben's going to weigh in now.
Yeah, so I have a daughter in grade 6, as you know, and also a constitutional schedule as well. And the way we did it, every family I know is slightly different, but the way we did it is we had no choice for advisory in our family. She was going to do the Chinese advisory, but she had choice for electives. But we had to talk it through. And as you see, one of the things I said at this table is one of the great things about middle school is there's lots of opportunity costs you have to weigh, and the kid has to go through this opportunity cost discussion because if she takes strings then she can't take 2 other semester-long electives that she really wants to take. If she takes these other semester-long electives, she can't take other ones. It's a good problem to have, and we have a lot of options for the kids to take. So doing that as an exercise as a family is really healthy, and it's a safe way to empower your kids to make some choices. But you can also choose as a family, like, no, this is something we value. It's going to be one Chinese elective, or you could choose your advisory. But I would prep that with your spouse before you.
And I would center that discussion around values. So you want to center it all around what you believe as a family. And so as a family, I'm going to pretend to be you. As a family, we've made considerable investment in this Chinese immersion program. And so what are you thinking in terms of how to continue that learning through middle school? And just presume reasonableness. And you might still get it in 5th grade. By 7th grade, you will not get it. But presume reasonableness and enter into that conversation. But I do see every year someone who really forces their kids into something, and they'll do it in 6th grade, and then it gets to the point where you just can't control them, and they just say no. And then you go down a bit of a different road. Yeah?
Just to clarify, because it says year-long electives, world language is not really
Well, it just falls in the elective block. Yeah.
Is either Chinese or Spanish.
Yes. Yeah. The only exception to that, I would say, for a handful of our kids who are in learning support, they might not take a world language. Yeah. But yes, good clarification. We will update the slides.
It's 2 electives per term, is that
2 per semester, yes. So my son took choir the whole way through, so then he ended up with 1 per semester that he got. Yeah. Yeah, so yes. So there are 2 right now. We go based on demand, and right now we have demand to offer 1 each semester. If there's more interest, absolutely. I'll talk a little bit about what's going on in grade 8, because we've tweaked them in grade 8. Yeah, great question. But we are totally, if there's demand, we will build it, absolutely. Right now, like this year, yeah, sorry. Yeah, great question. That's good to know for the conversation, because I've had that conversation in my house. The Chinese electives change in grade 8, but the other ones carry the whole way through. And so the conversation we had with our son was, okay, well, maybe you don't take design tech in grade 6, but you could take it in 7. And it was a way for him to feel less anxious about being in choir and giving up that full year. So yeah, the only electives that change in grade 8, they change, and I'll talk to you about them.
And they only can take them once?
No, they can take them as many times as they want. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, so we sort of explained this, but this is what it might look like. So semester 1, your child might take the Chinese performing arts and then visual art, and then semester 2, maybe modern Chinese media and culture and coding, and then that world language Chinese runs for the whole year. That's actually a slide, I think, from the parent night that's coming up. So if you miss something here, that's okay. You're getting the preview. So the 2 grade 6 and 7 elective options are modern Chinese media and culture. The kids love this because they get to work on their computers and develop multimedia skills, but what they're learning is, or they're growing, is an appreciation of Chinese media and media's representation of Chinese cultures. This one really hits them in the high interest area. They do a lot of critical thinking. They're looking at bias in media reporting, and then they also create content which then pushes to our social media platforms. There's a real audience, which, as we know, when someone is looking at our work who matters, we care a lot more about it. So that's one of the options. And the other one is the video that Amy was showing at the beginning, which was the kids doing their first performance from the Chinese performing arts class. But this course is broken down into 3 units. They bring experts in. There's a unit that we just saw the performance of on martial arts, and then there's a drama unit and a dance unit. So this is, if your child's a little more artsy, this is one that I think might resonate. And then in grade 8, we had a meeting with we'd met many times, but there was a meeting with our first set of parents who came through, and they were talking about grade 8, what they wanted for their kids. They wanted something interesting and engaging, something to learn more about Chinese culture, expand the Chinese language, maybe more literacy involved, and fun. Interestingly enough, when we talked to the kids, they wanted primarily interesting and engaging and fun. So we struck some middle ground. So we have a journalism in Chinese course that was offered in 6 that's coming back, and it will be offered in 8. They have a higher language level, and they're going to be able to produce content. So it meets all of the things. And it was quite popular when we ran it in grade 6. And then there's also a Chinese art class. And so once again, there's some jewelry design, some traditional ink painting. So when your child gets to grade 8, they'll have the opportunity, as they've sort of worked through those 6 and 7 electives, they'll have these opportunities in grade 8. We also offer after-school activities. Karin snuck out, but she runs with Julia Wong runs the dragon dance after-school activity, and we also have a mahjong club. No betting involved, I promise. We have a mahjong club. We also had a couple other clubs after school that we weren't getting anyone signing up for. So what we actually run is Chinese help. So 3 days a week, there's a Chinese teacher available if your child is struggling to go, and so you don't have to pay a tutor, and they can help your child with their Chinese. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday after school, there is Chinese help. You don't have to sign up for it. It's just a drop-in that your kids can go to. Okay, that is far more from me than you needed, so I will turn it over.
Awesome.
Very nice. We had a faculty meeting this morning, and
just to clarify, we're clapping for Amy.
Oh, good.
All right. Well, I have the exciting opportunity to give you a quick overview of the courses in world language that your children would have a choice between. And so if Darnell and Delinda can help me pass these out, I put them in packets for tables. I'm giving you a sneak peek at the course descriptions. You guys are getting some things before other people, so we'll hot off the presses. But there really are 4 options for your child in world language in the middle school. We have a course that we specially designed to support our immersion students called Chinese Language Acquisition and Literacy. We have a Chinese Language Arts course, which was formerly called Near Native. There's Spanish and there's French, so there's really 4 options. I'm going to give you a brief description of each of the 4, and you can take home these course descriptions to read later. And so I'm going to start with the Chinese focus. So in the next few weeks, our Office of Learning team will be working closely with the grade 5 immersion teachers to look at a body of evidence to make best recommendations for placement for middle school. And across this, they look at their stamp assessment. They do a speaking sample. They do some on-demand writing. They listen to their reading. They have them listen and do some interpretive listening where they listen to something in Chinese and have to say what it's about. And they look at other data that they've collected all year long. And based on these data points, there are 3 places that students have typically been landing in the last 2 years. The majority, I think all but maybe 7 or 8 last year, ended up in our Chinese Language Acquisition and Literacy course. That's really built to be the very next step in their literacy development from grade 5 to grade 6. And so when we developed this course, we actually had teachers from the elementary immersion program helping us design it so that it is a lockstep with their experience in elementary. We do have the course that's Chinese Language Arts. And that's for our students who really come from a home where Chinese is their mother tongue. And so that course is a little different. I'll describe that in a minute. And occasionally we do have some of our students who are learning Chinese, but their pace at which they're learning, especially in reading and writing, is not at that same intermediate high level that we typically see. And so we have an intermediate high course that allows students to continue to have the rigor in their speaking and listening while we're developing their reading and writing. So this course is, I don't know if I hit a button or not there. So I want to talk a little bit about our Chinese Language Acquisition and Literacy course. This is a course that is it just not working?
There's another one there.
All right. All right, perfect. So we have fully built out this course now for grades 6, 7, and 8. And the course is really designed to be a language arts course where our students are still acquiring
Chinese language skills, but it's focused on reading and writing. Give me just a second, I'll answer questions in just a second. Oh, the table?
We will send a copy of the slides out so that you can actually zoom into the different.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that table is quite small. Thank you for that feedback. This is just telling you what the different focuses are in the units. In each unit, the students are engaged in a rich novel study, so we're really taking their reading to the next level. And there's choices in their books. We have libraries where they can read at the right level, but we've worked really hard to make sure this is a rigorous course where there's reading, writing, speaking, and listening, all at that advanced high, or that intermediate high level. And so we've now built out grade 6, grade 7, and grade 8. Your students who go into grade 6 next year will be on the 3rd year, and so we've done a lot of revision over the last 2 years, so the course is continuing to improve. The second option is our Chinese language arts course, which we formerly called Near Native. And this is really focused in on students who have Chinese as their mother tongue, and so instead of learning the Chinese language, they're using their Chinese language to engage in literature. And so they're developing critical thinking, they're strengthening their self-expression and identity, and they're having meaningful connections with their native culture. And in this course, we really lean in on the Chinese language curriculum as well as the Singapore language curriculum standards. And so they engage in genre-based instruction, where they're also engaging with rigorous texts and doing extended reading and writing. And then the last option that some of our immersion families have chosen is they felt like we've spent all of elementary in Chinese and their children might want to learn a new language. And so they do have the option to look at Spanish or French, and depending on their background, they'll be placed appropriately. Some of our immersion students started in the native, like they've never spoken a word of Spanish or French before and they wanted to learn that language. We also had some students in the last couple years who were native Spanish speakers, right? That was their home language. And so they actually jumped into our more advanced courses. And so those are great options. Our Spanish and our French curriculum is really built on an authentic communication, deep in the culture of both the Spanish and the French experiences. And they really focus on getting students ready to take the AP exam by 11 or 12. The French and the Spanish exams are a little bit more challenging and at a higher language level than the Chinese, so they take it a little bit later. When we send you the deck, if you have specific questions about Spanish or French, you can talk to Adrian Biahara. He'll be your person. So the last piece we want to share with you is our high school Chinese pathway, just so you know what's coming next in the work that we're doing in that area. So I'm going to pass it off to Delinda.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So while your children are still at elementary school, we need to introduce your high school pathway. According to the research, we are finding that in the past 20 years, 30 years, the most effective learning language, the model is immersion through the kindergarten. So if the research has shown that by the age of grade 6, for immersion students, either their native language, like English or Chinese, will surpass their counterparts. It is repeatedly has been proved by the qualitative and quantitative research. So that is why we need to build up a unique pathway for your student, because your children are not only learning language, social language, they are learning academic language, learning Chinese through the science, learning Chinese through the performing arts, and so on. So you can see in high school, we this year have been working tirelessly to establish 3 pathways. In the past, we only have 1 pathway. This is a regular pathway for world language students, and by the end of the grade 12, they normally will be graduated from the level of AP Chinese. But we also this year adding 2 pathways, one for neonative, we officially called Chinese language and arts, and for majority of immersion, like your children, when they enter into the high school, we call the pathway called Chinese language acquisition and literacy. Okay, so if your student can enter into middle school, they enter into the neonative or Chinese language art pathway, they will be also majority of them be admitted to the high school Chinese language art. The courses will be offered like 80 Chinese media and society studies, 80 Chinese literature, 80 Chinese history. And for this track, we offer 81, 2, 3. And 81 is the proficiency is higher than the AP, Chinese language art, language and literature and AP. And so you can see 82 and 83 by they graduated from the SAS, they have much higher proficiency than our regular world language student. Okay, I can give you several examples. In 81 study, they have opportunity to putting on their entertainment show or drama. They have opportunity to interview their compelling topic with renowned, professors or authors and speakers, so they can engage a topic in depth critically. And also, they have opportunity to put on the stage their compelling voice regarding one of the most important issues surrounding them. So you can see these are all project-based learning opportunity that we offer them. By doing this, we have been interviewed students in the high school. Okay, we have interviewed parents in the high school, interviewed the teachers. We get to triangulate many data. And with also consultants, the professors in universities to give out some consultancy on the course we're offering. So by all doing this, we want to ensure the quality and the engagement for your students. There is a video you can show in later.
I am only coming.
Yeah. So the video is conducted by our deputy principal in Ansonia High School, but we also invited the most famous coaster in Shanghai News Reporter Center coming to share with us about the course values. Okay.
So yeah, we'll take it over from here. Well, first,
I want to add one more thing about the AT courses that I think is important for you to know. The AT course pathway that we've designed for our immersion students, those courses are being taught this year for students who are ready. So by the time our first group of 8th graders come, not next year, but the following year, those courses will already have been taught once and revised. And so we really did try to learn from our experience of not being quite ready for that first cohort of immersion when they came to grade 6. So by the time your students hit those courses, they will have been taught 2 or 3 years. So we will be teaching, refining, and improving them along the way. So they will be a tried and true course by the time your children get to grade 9.
And it might seem like we're looking too far ahead. The essence and the spirit of what we're communicating is we're thinking long and hard about the full P through 12 experience for kids, including your own kid. And I'm representing next year the high school as high school principal. I wasn't contributing positively, but not giving Chris a round of applause, but also Chris and I, we joke a lot, but we all care deeply about your kids and your kids' experience. So we don't want to get too stuck in the weeds about things, but we also want you to know that us looking at the details are because we deeply care about your kids' experiences, and we're thinking long and hard about creating a positive experience for your kids. So thank you, Delinda. Thank you, Amy. Chris and I are going to co-facilitate this last portion right here. And we just want to know from you all, what are you excited about related to the middle school? What are you wondering about? I think because we're running low on time, let's just open it up for any and all questions. And I know there's more questions because we saw a few hands go up, but any and all questions, what are you wondering about? What questions do you have? The space is open.
Or what are you excited about? We can live in the positivity world.
Yeah, you can make exciting. Or, hey, if there's a question up there that you really wanted to answer, what are you kind of frustrated about? We're open to that too. So we're open to all sorts of comments. Even though we said contribute positively and productively, airing out frustrations can be productive too because it helps shine a light.
And it just helps us know. Like, we really do want to know how you're feeling and how it's going for your kids.
Regarding the music path, right? Because it's been a while since my kids been in middle school. So if they choose music, they lose some of the elective, put it that way, right? So how many times a week?
So I have great news for you.
Yeah.
We fixed this problem 4 years ago now. So
Oh,
it used to be that if your child took music, it was every day all year, and that was all they got to do in grades 7 and 8. And so 2021, I think we fixed it, 21, 22. So they have it every other day for the year. So if they would have, say, every day 1, they have choir. But on day 2, that's when they get their other elective choice.
Great.
So on day 2, they could take their Chinese elective, and then the second semester, they get a different elective on that day 2. Great question, because it has changed.
Just to make numbers up. So if you choose music and Chinese, you get 2 electives, semester-long electives. If you don't do music, you have 4.
Yeah, what he said.
So have you tested the children who have come out of the immersion program and into middle school to see where they are? Do they still do STAMP? And how are those scores compared to where they were?
Can we, Amy?
Yes, so we do the stamp. We administer the stamp every spring, and so we'll be assessing the current immersion students in middle school in about a month. And we will make sure to share those results with you, both individually as parents as well as big picture, what we saw as trends.
So if they choose Chinese, they cannot choose another language, is that correct?
Okay, like, they could. I would say, I don't know, Ryan, you were in the middle school, maybe 1 or 2 kids in the whole middle school will do that, because what it does, if they take their Chinese and they take their other language, it fills their entire elective schedule, so they don't get any other choice, no music, no other elective. So there's the odd student, but like very, well, I guess Ben, you would know too, very uncommon. Yeah, one currently.
One more question right here.
The first thing I wanted to say is that the amazing teachers in elementary school, I think, made Chinese something that the kids really love. And I wanted to acknowledge that and to say that it's nice to see that that joy continues. I have to say I have a daughter in grade 6 and a son in grade 5. So I have the experience of my grade 6 daughter. And one of the things that I've already spoken with that I wanted you guys to share with everybody is that it's not such an easy transition, because the kids go from being together the whole day and being able to be in small groups and be paired by abilities to be in a group where, at least intermediate high at the moment, there is a very wide range of abilities. So some kids have a hard time, some kids have a very easy time, and it's a bit of a mix, right? But I think you've done a lot of work this year. So I wanted to give the chance to speak a bit about how you're addressing, and I don't know, maybe it's Linda, maybe it's Zhang Lao if she's here.
There's still a whole lot of work to be done, which is why we are revamping our world language program in a way that we haven't done before. And maybe Amy can talk a little bit about the added levels, because we do recognize that there's a wide band or a wide variety of proficiency levels in some of these classes.
I think a great example is that IH course that I showed in that first slide that sits parallel to the Chinese language and acquisition and literacy course and the Chinese language arts. This last year, we had a couple of students who left immersion not quite ready for the CLAL class. And we didn't have a fully developed IH course at grade 6, because our traditional world language as a Chinese as a second language students weren't ready for IH in grade 6. And so we're fixing that for next year. So I actually get to work with Delinda next week to lead a work group that's revising that grade 6 IH course so that it's there and it's robust. So if students, if we do have a few immersion students who need that, we can differentiate and meet their needs so that we get a little closer. If we put them in intermediate mid, it's a little too easy. So we are working on that and being more responsive in that way, yeah.
Does that fully answer your question, or are there other parts?
I think you're doing so much more on the...
Yes.
I mean, you just changed the name, so I can't figure out which
Yeah.
it is, but I think
Yeah.
CLAL is
Yes.
what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
You've done a lot of work this year, because I think one of the concern of the kids, I'm talking because my daughter was
Yes, yes.
Because I think it was a lot of work on making it more fun, making it as almost as fun as Chinese immersion, which I think is
Yes.
something that made it different.
Yeah, please, I'll let Darnell speak to this.
We've had a lot of student data on two things. Kids are saying, one, it's not challenging enough. And two, it's not captivating enough. And trying to balance those things. And I think we've really leaned in on the challenge, but a big gap that we're still seeing, and Delinda and I we've looked at the data from students and student surveys, is we still need to push the captivate so it is fun. And that's something that we also agree with. Middle school should be fun. If it's overly academic, overly rigorous, you lose that passion that you all were talking about in your language portraits when I came around to a few of your tables. So yes, we want it to be fun. Not just Chinese elective, but the actual Chinese classrooms. And Delinda, Amy, and a group of people, I don't know if Julie is still in here, but there's a number of folks that are trying to think of different ways to increase that captivation, increase that fun, and that's a huge part of that revamp and a huge part of that revision. I also don't want to go into a Chinese classroom if it's not engaging or fun, because then I'm in there for 45 minutes and I'm also bored. And we want the teachers to be excited, we want the students to be excited, and we want the instructional leaders too. Delinda, is there anything you want to add before we go to Ashley?
Yes, for the transition, we have done both. So as you can see, we have been sending middle school teachers to elementary to observe, and we also have opportunity for elementary grade 5 students coming to grade 6 immersion class. Like last week, we had our martial arts show, so grade 5 students are joining the session. So we have done this purposefully to make the transition as smooth as possible. And another thing that I with echo with that now has been said, we as a team, we know where we are right now, and we know where we are going to, and we are trying our best and tirelessly to leveraging the captivity as well as the challenging. And as you know, the data has been improved. If you're comparing the 2 years, has been increased largely. And I believe next year will be another leap height. So thank you for your question.
Hi, I have a question. I saw in your slide deck that you use a tremendous amount of data to inform placement in grade 6 in their Chinese class. And I'm just wondering if all of that data is shared with families as well, so that we can be informed about where our child is at and what their strengths and areas for growth are and so forth.
So the process that we used last year, and I would assume that Shuli and Lisa will use the same one, is that they reached out to parents to share their placement and explain what data was used to make that decision. So you will have that conversation with the immersion teachers, yes.
So it's actually two questions. If we continue, like for a native Chinese speaker, and then she chose to do this native course throughout middle school, once she enters high school, can she take AP Chinese in grade 9? And for if she chooses to do French and then follow that pathway, can she do AP French in grade 9 or grade 10 instead of 11 or 12?
So that might even be a Ryan Bruce question. Can you take the AP Chinese course if you're not enrolled in a Chinese course at the time?
In order to take the test, you have to be enrolled in one of our courses. No students can take any AP tests through SAS without taking the class that year.
So they'd have to be enrolled in a Chinese course.
Sorry, so I wasn't clear. So for a native Chinese speaker, and then she chooses a near native Chinese course in middle school, and then once she enters high school, can she take AP Chinese in grade 9?
So we would not recommend that, because this would be a course that would be way below their language proficiency. What they would do is take this AT Chinese Media and Studies, and then they're eligible to take the AP exam.
In grade 10 then?
In 9th grade, 10th grade, whatever they're in these courses. Okay. But they just need to be enrolled in the AT course. No, but AP is set even lower than we think our immersion students will need. So that's why we created these rigorous AT courses to keep them engaged and moving forward. They can pause and take that test. They will have no problem passing it, because it will be a proficiency level below where they are. but then they can get the check box for universities to get the credit.
And then for French, if a student takes middle school, takes French in middle school, and once in high school, and then she continues to learn French.
So we've mapped out that pathway. A student starting as a novice in grade 6 could be taking the Spanish AP or the French AP exam by 11th or 12th grade, as long as they were doing quite well in the class, right?
But then there's no difference if someone takes French in high school, and then they can still do it. Take AP.
It would be
in
a
11th or
tough
12th.
pathway to start French for the first time and as a freshman and get to the AP exam. It's unlikely. That person might have to have some French in their background and doing a lot of outside work. It would be an unlikely pathway. But it is a pathway if you start in grade 6.
Ryan, do you want to add anything to that?
Well,
You see this.
just what Amy was saying. If you were to start French just cold in high school with no other experience, it'd be a really, really tough road ahead to get up to AP by the end of grade 12.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So for you folks that actually do have questions, but you just don't want it recorded on camera, we will stick around for a few minutes, if that's okay with all of the SAS leaders here. But really, really thank you. And the questions that you pose, even the questions that are more from an activist standpoint and not a reflective standpoint, are needed. And we're all in this together. We're all in the same team to support your things. So thank you so much for taking the morning. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.